Has you ever found yourself, just endlessly scrolling through your phone, maybe your computer,
Oh, yeah.
and just feeling a bit overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information hitting you every single day?
Definitely. It's a constant flood.
It really does feel like we're constantly bombarded, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, how much stuff do we actually encounter, let alone absorb? It's dizzying.
it really is.
Well, today, we're trying to make sense of all this.
Mad show, let's go, open up your mind and grow. Facts and stories, things you never know. Every episode, we light the glow. Step into the world of Mad Show.
The attention economy.
Yeah.
Our mission really is to unpack what this term actually means, how it's shaping your daily life sometimes in ways you don't even realize, and what the future might hold for, well, maybe our most valuable yet definitely finite resource, our attention.
Limited resource.
Exactly. And all our insights today are coming from a really fascinating brief by the United Nations, which explores this whole critical topic.
A very timely report.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The idea of an attention economy. It sounds super modern, doesn't it? But where did it even originate?
Well, it's funny you say that because it actually goes back way further than most people think, back to the late 1960s.
Believe the 60s, before the internet.
Yeah, exactly. A guy named Herbert A. Simon first coined the term. He saw what he called information overload as fundamentally an economic problem.
Wow. So even back then, before smartphones, before social media?
Before any of that, he was already seeing this shift,
Yeah.
from information being scarce to attention becoming the scarce thing.
Okay, so Simon spots this early on. Then the internet arrives.
And boom, the internet just radically amplifies everything Simon was talking about. I mean, think about it. Before the web, information was relatively scarce, right? You had to actively seek it out. Libraries, specific journals.
Right, you had to work for it.
Exactly. Then suddenly content supply becomes, well, abundant. It's instantly available, practically limitless, and this creates this huge growing imbalance.
An imbalance between
This ever-expanding digital universe and our, stubbornly finite human capacity to pay attention, our brains just haven't evolved nearly as fast as the technology.
So human attention becomes the bottleneck.
The absolute limiting factor, yeah. Digital data, they say, roughly doubles every couple of years, but our attention, it's still locked by the hours in a day, our cognitive limits.
So if information isn't scarce anymore, attention is. What happens then, economically speaking?
Well, that's where others picked it up. By 2001, Davenport and Beck really formalized it. They defined the economics of attention as basically managing information by treating our attention as a scarce commodity, applying economic theory to it.
Okay, so they're putting an economic lens on our focus.
Precisely, and that really cemented the idea that we're now living in an attention economy, not just an information economy. It's a fundamental shift in what's valuable.
So what did that shift actually look like? In the digital world, how did it play out?
Well, what's fascinating here is that by the early 2000s, there was already so much digital data being created globally. I mean, figures from 2015 suggest only about 0.5% of it was actually being analyzed.
0.5%? That's tiny.
It's minuscule. So information itself became incredibly cheap, almost, worthless in its raw state. But the price of attention, especially after the internet really took off, that skyrocketed.
Okay, so information is cheap, attention is expensive. How did the tech industry, especially jumping into the 2010s, how did they react to that? What tools did they use to, capture that expensive attention?
That's where the real game changer comes in. The industry responded with the rise of big data, automating online data collection, analyzing users on a scale never seen before.
Right, tracking clicks, views, everything.
Everything. And then AI enters the picture, artificial intelligence to actually process all that data. The UN brief even describes AI as adding hundreds of millions of workers in the form of online robots.
Wow, so AI essentially solved the problem of processing the information overload.
Exactly. These technologies basically overcame the human bottleneck for processing information. They turned all that raw data into immense value by understanding and, crucially, predicting our behavior.
Predicting behavior. So it's not just collecting data about what we did, but predicting what we might do next, what we might click or buy or watch.
Precisely. That sounds powerful.
Yeah, powerful and maybe a bit manipulative.
Well, that's the core of it. To capture that scarce attention, digital platforms refined their business models. They strategically capture our private attention by systematically collecting and analyzing personal data.
And often without us really knowing the full picture, right?
Often without users fully grasping the extent, yeah. This data is then packaged and sold to advertisers, and those advertisers pay based on viewer attention, which the platforms maximize through, content engagement.
Like those endless YouTube recommendations or the perfectly tailored Facebook feed.
Exactly like that. This is the core of what Professor Shoshana Zuboff famously termed surveillance capitalism.
Surveillance capitalism. Okay.
Yeah, where your digital life isn't just being observed, it's being predicted and actively shaped. Your future behavior is essentially being commodified sometimes before you even think of it yourself.
And the scale of this economy, it's just huge, isn't it? Because we as users, we don't usually pay directly for these platforms. So the value, our attention, our data, it's kind of hidden.
It's incredibly opaque to the individual, but estimates put the global attention economy in the trillions of US dollars.
Trillions.
Trillions. One estimate for the U.S. alone back in 2016 was something like $7.1 trillion and 437 billion hours of attention.
That's staggering. Compare that to, say, the big tech companies' revenues.
Right, so the combined revenues of the big five, Meta, Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, were around $1.4 trillion in 2021. So yes, massive value is being generated, but the individual user often has no idea how much their specific attention is actually worth in that system.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole extractive model, what are the broader impacts?
Yeah.
Economically, socially?
Yeah, they're profound. Let's start with the economic and political side.
Okay. What does concentrating all that data mean for power?
Well, having that sheer volume of data gives these big tech companies unprecedented power. They can spot potential competitors early and, well, eliminate them, buy them out.
So it consolidates their market position.
Hugely. And arguably, it can even slow down certain kinds of innovation.
Yeah.
We also see this power influencing political conversations. Think about the whole debate around Elon Musk buying Twitter, for example.
Right.
And there's also an imbalance in power when it comes to the people creating the content that attracts our attention in the first place. Often, platforms underpay content developers. That dispute between Australia and Facebook over news content compensation is a prime example.
Okay, that covers some of the economic side.
Yeah.
But what about the human cost? The impact on us, mentally and socially?
That's maybe even more concerning. This constant erosion of control over our personal data. It really affects our psyche. It influences our beliefs, contributes to that feeling of information overload we talked about.
And the algorithms themselves play a role.
A huge role. They're designed to maximize engagement, right?
Yeah.
And often the easiest way to do that is by promoting content that's incendiary, controversial, or polarizing, stuff that gets a reaction.
Which leads to?
Well, increased exposure to misinformation, for one. Also, risks of addiction, desensitization, even radicalisation in some cases. And all of this directly hits our mental health and well-being. That's a clear link to the UN's Sustainable Development Goal for Good Health, SDG 4.
It's interesting, too, that the brief mentions reducing time on platforms can boost productivity.
Yeah, it connects to SDG 8, the goal for decent work and economic growth. Less distraction, more focus.
That's a crucial point. And it brings up a really fundamental ethical question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When our digital selves are being tracked and analyzed so meticulously.
Absolutely. What are the ethical implications when this happens, often without genuine informed consent? With all this data, descriptive, behavioral, predictive platforms can build these incredibly detailed digital profiles. The brief calls them human digital twins.
Human digital twins, like a virtual copy of our habits and preferences.
Exactly. And this digital twin essentially commodifies and sells our behavior patterns, almost like trading futures contracts on what we're likely to do next.
And this is happening without our explicit, okay.
Largely without truly informed consent, yes. And as data becomes more and more tied to our identity, the ethical issues just mount up. UN Secretary General Guterres himself called the use and abuse of data one of the gravest perils we face. Our own intentions can be impaired because we just don't see the hidden algorithms subtly guiding our choices.
So it's not just what we see, but how our decisions might be nudged, maybe even manipulated.
Yeah.
What about the impact on the wider political sphere? Democracy.
Well, on the political front, having access to vast amounts of personal data allows governments or even malicious groups to potentially manipulate behavior, which is a clear violation of human rights.
And we've seen examples of this fueling real-world conflict.
Sadly, yes. The normalization of hate speech online, the spread of radicalizing content, it fuels polarization and social unrest. The brief points to events like the January 6th Capitol riots in the U.S. or the January 8th riots in Brazil in 2023, both significantly driven by misinformation spread on these platforms.
And there's another angle too, right? The impact on traditional news.
Yes, absolutely. These digital platforms effectively siphon advertising revenue away from traditional news media. This displaces local news outlets, reduces the diversity of viewpoints available, and ultimately undermines SDG 16, the goal for peace, justice, and strong institutions.
And I guess we shouldn't forget the environmental footprint of all this digital activity.
Definitely not. It's often overlooked, but it's significant. All this data processing, server farms, network infrastructure, it contributes substantially to global greenhouse gas emissions. Around 4% back in 2019, but some projections say it could reach 21% by 2030.
21%, that's huge.
It is. And think about this. The pollution from email spam alone would require something like 1.6 billion trees to offset.
Wow. Okay, so putting it all together, it paints a pretty stark picture, doesn't it? This current model feels very extractive, like it's taking our attention with not much thought for our well-being or society. Is that a fair assessment? Like a one-sided transaction?
I think that's a very fair assessment. It is largely extractive. And that's precisely why the UN brief proposes this fundamental shift, a move towards what they call a yellow economy.
A yellow economy. Okay, what does that entail?
It's about creating a more conscious, more intentional attention economy. The core principles sound simple, but they're quite radical. It's designed to be people-centered, intention-based, not just attention-based.
Intention-based, meaning it aligns with what we want to do.
Exactly. It aims to be regenerative, not extractive. To minimize inequalities, acknowledge our actual human nature, not just exploit psychological loopholes, and actively promote well-being by, for instance, minimizing addictive design patterns.
That sounds like a complete paradigm shift. How would this yellow economy, if we could achieve it, impact other areas, like sustainability?
Well, the potential ripple effects are huge. A yellow economy could actively support other sustainable economies, like the green economy for the environment, the blue for oceans, the orange for creativity. It could promote circular models, too.
How would it empower individuals?
By giving you the power to consciously direct your attention, your time, maybe even your money, towards social causes or goals that align with your actual values. It could even gently nudge consumers towards more environmentally and socially responsible choices based on their stated intentions.
Oh, interesting.
Plus, it could really boost what's called the frugal economy, where users collaborate more to co-create solutions. Think open source projects, peer-to-peer sharing, collective problem solving. It envisions a much more democratic economic system, really.
That's a really powerful vision, moving from extraction to regeneration. But, okay, how do we actually get there? It sounds like a massive change, needing serious policy intervention.
Oh, absolutely. It's not something that happens automatically. It requires policies that actively discourage or eliminate those persuasive techniques that exploit our psychology.
And instead incentivize.
Instead, incentivize well-being, mutual benefit, reciprocity, which means fundamentally shifting the underlying business models of these platforms.
So, concrete steps. What kind of governance is needed?
We need global efforts, really. Better governance of digital platforms, updated competition policies to tackle that huge market power concentration we discussed, and, crucially, much stronger data protection.
Focused on what, specifically?
Focused on genuine intent and consent, real transparency, and clarity about who actually owns and controls our data.
Now, a lot of this touches on the right to privacy. Has this been formally recognized in the digital context? By the UN, for instance?
Yes, and what's interesting is that UN member states have recognized the right to privacy in the digital age. Going back to resolutions in 2013, they affirmed that the rights people have offline must also be protected online.
And they've expressed concerns about consent.
Explicitly. In 2020, they noted concern that individuals often can't give free, explicit, and informed consent to the sale or use of their personal data under the current systems.
Are there any real-world examples of laws trying to address this?
Well, the EU's GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, is probably the most well-known and stringent example globally.
Right, GDPR.
Right.
What does that actually give individuals?
It recognizes several key rights for you, the data subject. It's about giving you back control, the right to be informed about what data is collected, the right to access it, correct it, even demand its erasure, the right to be forgotten. Also, rights to restrict or object to processing, and importantly, rights related to automated decision-making and profiling.
So real tools for individuals.
Yes. And many other countries are now looking at or developing similar legislation, realizing how critical this is.
Okay, so legal frameworks are one piece. What about the ethics of the technology itself, particularly AI, which seems so central to this whole economy?
That's another crucial piece. UNESCO adopted its recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence in 2021. It's the first global standard-setting effort focused on protecting human rights alongside AI development.
And what does it say about algorithms?
It emphasizes that AI algorithms shouldn't exploit people or their digital twins. They need to be regularly checked, audited by unbiased humans to make sure they align with humane values. It also tackles issues like filter bubbles created by search engines.
Where you only see stuff that confirms what you already think.
Exactly, raising that important question. Is it okay for technology to influence our behavior just for commercial profit?
It seems clear that this requires a really fundamental shift in how we view attention itself, not just as a resource to be mined, but something valuable to protect, maybe even cherish.
Absolutely, recognizing its intrinsic value to us as humans.
But even with these ideas, these potential solutions, you mentioned challenges and knowledge gaps remain.
Yes, significant ones. A major hurdle is simply measuring the harm. How do we quantify the real costs of misinformation spreading, or the societal cost of addictive platform design, or horrific things like online child exploitation facilitated by these systems?
Measuring the value created.
Exactly. We need ways to estimate the true value generated from individuals' attention if we're ever going to talk about fair compensation or redistribution. This ties directly into that broader UN call to look beyond GDP as the sole measure of progress. We need metrics that reflect what people actually value.
And what about our collective ability to focus? Is that changing?
Well, there's concerning evidence suggesting it is. Empirical findings point towards an accelerated shortening of the collective attention span. They call it social acceleration.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, one study looked at Twitter hashtags between 2013 and 2016. The average time a hashtag stayed in the global daily top 50 shrank significantly from about 17.5 hours down to just 11.9 hours in only 3 years.
Wow, that's fast. And not great for tackling complex problems.
Not at all. Complex global issues require sustained focus, deep thinking. This trend doesn't bode well. It also brings us back to that question, what is attention? Is it labor, a commodity, a totally new kind of production factor? The brief leans towards it being its own unique resource.
And for real change to happen, it seems like the people actually building these systems need to be part of the solution.
Absolutely critical. Programmers, designers, engineers. They are, as the brief puts it, the next generation of rights defenders. They need better ethical guidance, better technical frameworks, and need to be actively involved in reshaping this economy.
It's such a huge area. The brief points out at least 6 key areas needing more research to really push towards this regenerative yellow economy.
Yeah, it's a big list.
Ethics is one, like the ethics of commodifying attention, the ethics of manipulation, then the economic mechanics, how do you promote sustainable consumption? What's the ideal market structure? Regulatory mechanisms need updating. We need better attention literacy so people understand manipulation tactics.
Better data governance, too, dealing with things like public domain data, digital colonialism.
Right. And understanding the impact on marketing and advertising models. And finally, tackling AI's current inability to truly reflect complex human values like fairness and accountability.
It all comes down to a fundamental question, really, for all of us. How do we make sure that technology serves human well-being and not the other way around? It's definitely a complex landscape. No easy answers. But understanding it, like we've tried to do today, that's got to be the first step towards shaping a more conscious, more equitable digital future.
And those UN principles you mentioned offer a kind of roadmap.
They do. Things like the right to be rewarded for your data, the right to be protected from psychological manipulation. They offer concrete starting points.
Ultimately, I think really shows that our attention, it isn't just another commodity to be bought and sold. It's fundamental to our experience as humans. It's tied up with our well-being, our ability to connect, even the health of the planet.
Couldn't agree more.
So maybe something for you to think about as you go about your day. How much of your free attention are you consciously choosing to give? Versus how much is maybe being subtly influenced or nudged or even just extracted without you fully realizing it?
That's a powerful question.
What would it actually look like if every time you interacted online, it genuinely served your stated intention, your well-being, rather than just maximizing engagement time for a platform? How might your daily digital life feel different if you started valuing your own attention as much as these multi-trillion-dollar industries clearly do? Just something to mull over based on what we've unpacked today.
Mad show, let's go. Open up your mind and grow. Facts and stories, things you never know. Every episode, we light the glow. Step into the world of Mad Show. Turn it up, let the rhythm flow. Feel the beat, take control. Don't be shy, just let it go. This is where the magic grows. Tune in now, it's the Mad Show. Lights up bright and minds will glow. Every day we learn and grow. Come along and join the flow. New ideas begin to shine. Breaking limits, crossing lines. Every moment feels divine. In the world of Mad Show time. Turn it up, let the rhythm flow. Feel the beat, take control. Don't be shy, just let it go. This is where the magic grows. Tune in now, it's the Mad Show. Lights up bright and minds will glow. Every day we learn and grow. Come along and join the flow.